lost all credibility. Hello and welcome to VeritasPopuli, Truth for the People. I'm your host and producer of the show, Dan Meredith. On VeritasPopuli, we explore many areas: historical, political, spiritual, cultural, and many other things. On this show, we believe that the truth, no matter how hard you rub it, it only becomes more shiny. Today, we're honored to have some special guests with us. Russell and Anne-Marie Clark are the parents of a beautiful little girl, Annabel, and Annabel is here with us today also. Russell is a nurse practitioner, and Anne-Marie is an author and currently on the board of the directors of the Down Syndrome Association of Middle Tennessee. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us, Dan.
I need to let everybody know that I have known Russell and Anne-Marie for, I don't know how many years. Rusty had gray hair and I had hair when we met long ago. He and I were both registered nurses at Vanderbilt, and I've known Anne-Marie just as long ago, before the little one came along. This show is going to be about something that I didn't know much about until just recently, about Down syndrome. Tell me a little bit about how you all became involved in this whole subject.
Well, I'll let Anne-Marie start, but I'll give a little introduction. I also did not know that much about Down syndrome, and of course, during the pregnancy, one of the tests that they're able to do is the maternity 21 test, which is where they take some of the mother's blood and they separate out the DNA, and they're the test is very, very accurate. It's not like the old test that were sort of a guess. The test they do today is very accurate. So, of course, we got the prenatal diagnosis of Down syndrome, and at that time, you are forced with the reality of the dream of the child that you thought you were going to have is not what you thought, and I guess every child is different, but it's just you're faced with knowledge ahead of time.
Right.
And I'll let Anne-Marie pick up.
And it's at that time that many people think, oh no, this is something that I'm not expecting, and I don't know what to do.
That was exactly it
Right.
with us. So this was at 15 weeks. Did not think I could get pregnant, and here suddenly I am pregnant at 43 years old.
Right.
And so we get a diagnosis at 15 weeks. I did not know anyone who had Down syndrome, so we were very uneducated. So, of course, fear sets in, and then we found out shortly after that she had a heart defect that would need to be repaired, and then she had a stomach defect that would need to be repaired. So, it's like bam, 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 all these, three things that are, bad news, so to speak, going in at one time, and you're just trying to process it. But once she was born, it was, we loved her. She was just our child. There was nothing different about her, and all of that fear went away.
I think that's a lot of people have the idea that, well, Down syndrome is going to be bad.
Right.
But as you said, all children are different.
Exactly.
Some people are brilliant, like my friend Rusty, and some people are more like me. But if we judge people by, well, if you're not like me, then you don't have a right to exist. That's not the way to be. But all children are different, and Annabelle is different. You can see she's playful, and I had 2 children this age, and they were just like Annabelle, playful and like to wiggle around and squirm and things like that. So anyway, after Annabelle was born, you mentioned she had a lot of problems, physical problems.
Correct.
That weren't Down syndrome, but maybe associated, because a lot of times Down syndrome babies have physical.
They, a lot of times have the heart defect.
Or heart defects and stomach problems, things like that. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, Down syndrome, otherwise known as trisomy 21, is on the DNA. When it's sequenced, it puts one extra little step of instructions. So when it starts making the heart, every time it comes down to step number 21, it adds one little extra bit of information, and then it goes back down. And so as it makes the heart just slightly different. As it makes the stomach just slightly different. It makes the brain slightly different. It makes the muscles slightly different. So in her case, when her heart developed, the divider that's down the middle of the heart that separates the right and left chambers wasn't there. So we knew before she was born that she was going to have open heart surgery to repair that. But they have to be about 4 to 6 months old before they can actually do the repair. They can't do it when they're first born. And in her case, when her stomach developed, it wasn't attached properly to her small intestines. So she essentially had a bowel obstruction from the day she was born. So, and she had that surgically repaired a couple days after she was born, where they go in there and actually just fix the stomach where it attaches properly to the small intestine. Other than that, and then we found out that she had to have, she also happened to have glaucoma, which was not necessarily related to anything to do with Down syndrome. It just, she happened to have glaucoma, which is pretty rare for kids. So then she wound up having to have eye surgery several times.
She has beautiful glasses.
Yeah.
You have some nice glasses.
But when it's all said and done, up until about 20, 25 years ago, if someone had Down syndrome, they wouldn't have even qualified to have the heart surgery. It would have been an exclusion as to why they wouldn't have done the heart surgery.
So
now you have an entire generation of kids that are basically growing up, and they'll never have the pulmonary hypertension problems that some of the other children that may not have gotten their hearts repaired. I'm gonna pass you to Mama. But without that, so she's actually doing fantastic now. She no longer has a feeding tube. She's just a regularly developing child. She goes to essentially school 2 days a week, and she just blends in with all the rest of the kids, and she has no idea that she's the star of the show. She's just Annabelle, and she goes to school, and everybody just jumps in and plays and runs and jumps, and I mean, she's just a typically developing kid.
Yeah. I think that's basically what I would like to get across to viewers, is that many times in the past, people have had the idea that if they hear my child's going to have Down syndrome, it's like the most horrible thing in the world that can happen. But you found it's not. And many people that I talk to that have a child with Down syndrome, not only is it not a bad thing, Rusty said to me one time, this is the most wonderful thing, the biggest blessing that I've ever had. Explain that, because some people can think in terms of, well, maybe it's not the worst thing, and maybe it's something I can tolerate, but to say this is the best thing, that's hard for people to understand. Explain how having a child with Down syndrome is a great blessing.
If you ever get a chance to be around a person who has Down syndrome, and with Henry being the Down Syndrome Association, we have gotten the pleasure of interacting with hundreds and hundreds of people that have Down syndrome, and I would say universally, they are the most loving, accepting, grateful, thankful people that just make you feel good to be alive. They are truly a blessing to have, to be around, to know, to experience. It's so much fun. As Anne-Marie and I have often said, people, you're not going to be a NASA scientist at 5 years old. I mean, NASA just doesn't have a good hiring ratio for 5-year-olds. So it really doesn't matter how brilliant you are at 5. But our goal is just to have a child who can read and write and experience and think and solve problems and be independent and grow and accomplish whatever it is that she wants to be in this world, without society saying, well, you have a label, and because you have this label, you can't do that. And I don't believe in labels. It's, she's a person, as Anne-Marie and I said, she's on Annabelle time. She's going to grow and experience and develop at her whatever rate that she goes. So I'm going to turn over to Anne-Marie, but I know she can.
I think, I get asked a lot, well, would you change her having Down syndrome? And at a time, I wasn't quite sure if I would, I don't know. Now, it makes me cry talking about it, but
You can make me cry too.
now, no, I wouldn't change it for anything, because it makes her who she is.
Yeah.
It has set her personality, and she would be a different child if she didn't have Down syndrome. She would have a different personality, I feel. And, she has taught us so much, the capacity to love and accept, and just you think differently when you have a child with a special need.
There's a story that I tell some people that I'm a registered nurse by trade. when I was in the emergency department when I first got out of nursing school in 1987. Wow. Were you born in 87?
Yeah.
You were a little child, weren't you? But I was starting an IV on a young man. He was probably almost my age. He was in his 20s, I guess. I'm starting an IV and trying to be very gentle, starting an IV in his hand, as I remember. And I remember I'd never met this young man before. I started the IV, and when I got done, and of course IVs hurt. When people say, is this going to hurt? I say, well, yeah, I'm sticking you with a needle. And I know Rusty probably tells people that too. But when I started the IV and I got done, I looked up at him, and he looked down at me. I was down, kneeling down, starting his IV. And he looked at me, and he said, I love you. And I just thought, and that's been 30 years ago, and I remember that ever since, that when people say something about Down syndrome and whatever, I think, you know, that's something that people have, that some of these children have, that other people don't have. This unlimited capacity for love. That young man will never cheat me in a business deal. He'll never be one of these people that do me wrong. He met me and he told me right off, I love you. After I stuck a needle in his hand, he said, I love you. And that's different from other people. The Down Syndrome Awareness Group. Tell me a little bit about that and that event that we went to.
The Buddy Walk.
The Buddy Walk, right. At the beginning of November, I think it was.
The end of October. Yeah, it's always, October is Down Syndrome Awareness Month, so it's always held in October. And this year we had record-breaking, I believe over 6,000 people attend our Buddy Walk. And it's a community event. It's free, you know, open to anybody in the community. You don't have to have Down syndrome or know anyone with Down syndrome. But it raises awareness. It's our biggest fundraiser also, but the goal is to raise awareness and inclusive, you know, just to raise awareness about Down syndrome. And people who come, they absolutely love it. You know, some of them see people with Down syndrome for the very first time, and that's their first introduction to it. And the Buddy Walk is just like a big giant party where we're celebrating those who have Down syndrome. And it's a lot of fun, and it gets bigger and bigger every year.
It was really amazing to see all those families together.
Yes.
Well, you all have had a real experience that I've known you through this and been somewhat involved. I know you've had a lot of friends around, but from the very beginning to what you see today, when we see Annabel here today, I know it's been there's been ups and downs and good times and bad times. Today, if it's okay with you, and we've talked about this before, we're going to show some still photos of your experience and maybe let you comment. We've got about 10 minutes, 15 minutes left, but let's show some of these photos, and you all can see them on a monitor. If we can bring those up, just comment a little bit about these photos.
We obviously, when Annabelle was born, we knew that she was going to have some types of surgery. So Henry gave birth at Vanderbilt, and of course, we lived in the NICU unit there at Vanderbilt for at least till
it was 35 days. Yeah, we were
35
for the
days.
Initial. Yeah.
And she wound up having to go home with a tube in her nose, and there was just all the issues. And then it got to where she needed oxygen, and then we wound up going back to Vanderbilt, and she was too sick, not old enough to have the surgery and too sick to have the surgery. So you're in this every single day of stress and worry there at Vanderbilt. And I know Anne-Marie spent essentially 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We were there all total the second time for a good 70.
That was actually the fourth time. We got admitted 3 times before heart surgery. And then heart surgery was over 2 months. And we were there a month prior to heart surgery in the ICU, the children's ICU.
Wow.
So I think the pictures that are up here, she was in the NICU at that time. That was when she was still in the NICU and just a baby, and she had the duodenal atresia surgery. I think those pictures are right before we went home.
Okay. There's another picture of her and Daddy eating breakfast, I think.
They were
Fighting over the
reenacting the Lady and the Tramp
Lady and the
spaghetti. Yeah.
Okay. And is that a Christmas
That's
gift?
last year's Christmas. Yes.
Okay. Big difference from that picture.
Yeah, that's
Is that
another
in the
NICU.
NICU? Okay.
That
Another
is
one?
when we were in the surgery for heart surgery, and we were awaiting heart surgery, and she was very, very sick. and honestly did not know she was going to make it through heart surgery.
Wow.
That was right after, maybe,
Okay.
right around heart surgery time. Well, that was first birthday.
Okay.
So it's like a little family photo show here.
That was this year, yeah.
And
Is
this
that
is
4th of July?
4th of July.
what I
Yeah.
like about this picture here is it's like not only is the 4th of July in the celebration of freedom of our country, in this picture here, it's almost the freedom of Annabelle, because in this particular picture, she has completed all her procedures, she's had all her surgeries. She is essentially a healthy child who is just now getting to experience life as it happens without anything. So that freedom picture is actually her freedom of just being able to be a child for the first real time. And of course, there's her Mickey Mouse ears. So
That's Minnie Mouse.
Minnie Mouse.
excuse
Minnie
me.
Mouse.
We haven't made the trip to the Mickey Land yet, but I imagine within the next year that her
I'm in.
interest.
Let me know
You're
when
in?
you're
Okay.
going.
I imagine that's going to be a trip that she's going to look forward to and have an absolutely wonderful time.
I was talking to my grandson the other night and said, "You want to go to Disney World?" And he said, "Disney World?" And I asked his mom, and she said, "You need to wait till you get a little older." And I said, "No, let's go now, and then when you're older." Rusty knows I'm a kid.
This picture here is when she was in the NICU, and I think this
That was a firstborn picture. That was the day she was born. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Birthday?
That's first birthday again.
First birthday.
her mom might be a prolific photographer, so in addition to being an author, she's
You are a photographer, aren't you?
Yeah.
I mean, a real photographer.
I did used to do photography.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah. Vacation.
I think what I wanted to show with these pictures is Annabelle is a little baby, a little child like all other children, and she's growing up and doing things like other children. She goes to class. I see some of your Facebook posts about swimming classes and all the different classes she's going to, and just like
She
children.
does. She
what
goes to
children do.
a regular Mother's Day out preschool.
Mhm.
She's the only child with special needs there. She does just fine. She's learned a lot. I think you said that they're just children, and when I was pregnant with her and doing tons of research, as you know I probably do as a
Mhm.
writer, I'm a researcher too, and one phrase really stuck out to me is, remember you're having a baby first. This is a baby first. This is not a child with Down syndrome. It is a child with Down syndrome, but don't think of that as the first thing. You're having a baby, just like anybody else, you have a baby. And you love that baby, and you bring that baby home, and you take care of that baby. Your baby's going to have challenges, and things may take them a little longer, and your milestones may be at different times, but first and foremost, they're a child. And, we don't think about Down syndrome every single day.
Mhm.
She's just who she is.
Yeah.
She just happens to have it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she runs through the house, and she's got a little slide she likes to climb and slide down, and she's curious. She gets into things. So, it's I guess what I would like people to see from this interview is that if you're sitting out there and I don't know, somebody or you just found out that you're going to have a Down syndrome baby, is to contact the Down Syndrome Association. There are chapters all across America. We happen to be part of the Middle Tennessee Association here, which we work with a fantastic group of people in that organization. But I guess the first reflex would be to not think of this as a person. And if you don't think of it as a person, then things get real easy for some people to take care of it. But in our situation, we chose this little person. It's almost like God gave this wonderful little person to us at the time of our lives that we needed it. So although we're a little bit older in the age department, it is an absolute wonderful experience to get the opportunity to be Annabelle's parents, and she's taught us as much as we're teaching her about life and just everything in general. So just reach out to the Down Syndrome Association of Middle Tennessee. There are so many absolute wonderful opportunities. The swim class, the Dolphins program here in Nashville is open to not just people with Down syndrome, but with any child that has special needs. Free swim classes. There's a music class that she attends through Belmont. I think it's some of the future student teachers that are coming through their program there. They have a music class that they put on certain times of the year. So it is absolutely lots of opportunities, and the largest portion of the Syndrome Association work that they do is advocacy. And we have a group of people called self-advocates, and these are people that hopefully you'll get a chance to meet that are basically advocating for themselves. Obviously, Annabelle's just a child. She doesn't know. But we're behind the scenes making sure that her future education and opportunities are there just like for anybody else.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that I have done some research on in preparation for this show, and then we're going to do another show a little bit later with the self-advocates and some other folks, is that Down syndrome folks, in years past, you would think of the life expectancy being short, but that's because, as you said, sometimes they wouldn't take care of some of the physical problems they had.
Right.
But I've read recently and saw a YouTube video of a lady that got her bachelor's degree out in California and swam the English Channel, and she made a big speech talking about, she said, all lives matter. My life matters, even though I have Down syndrome. And she was talking about how things have changed so much over the years and so many opportunities, and the picture that people have of Down syndrome is not the true picture.
Exactly.
Just like there are people from one end to another, the spectrum of people that don't have Down syndrome, the same thing is true with Down syndrome. There are people with so many different abilities, and if you just say, well, someone has Down syndrome, so they don't have the ability, then of course they won't be able to develop, because you don't give them the opportunities and teach them and allow them to do these things. So, and if Annabelle has taught you something, Rusty, then that's something, because ever since I've known you, I thought you knew everything. So this is a great opportunity to have you all here and learn more about this. What would you say to people that might find themselves in a situation where they get the news that they're going to have a Down syndrome baby, a child with Down syndrome?
Anne Marie and the Down Syndrome Association, they put on it's essentially a baby shower every few months. And it's for any parent who's just recently given birth to a Down syndrome baby, or someone who's been prenatally diagnosed with a Down syndrome baby. And it's an opportunity to basically meet face-to-face real-life parents with children, and believe me, the room is full of children, and they're just running and bouncing and doing all kinds of things. And I think that's a tremendous opportunity, is to actually reach out to parents of somebody that is has been in that situation that you're in right now, and can be there for you and help you down this path, because it's not easy. I mean, Anne-Marie and I can tell you, it's looking back, we can say, it's all roses today. But, there's a reason God put the whole roses on the entire stem, from the top of the flower all the way down to the root. It is. You've got to climb up a lot of thorns to get to that rose. And the rose is there. It's always there. But there's a lot of thorns on the way. And I can tell you that there's been a lot of tears and crying and stress and anxiety and worry. But at the end of the day, what parent doesn't stress and worry over their child? What parent doesn't worry about their child, where they're going to go to school or what they're going to be when they grow up? It is one of those things that is universal to all parenting. So my advice is to reach out, contact like I say, there's Down Syndrome associations all across America. Wherever you live, get active in that organization, and we strongly encourage you to come to the Buddy Walk each year. And what would you tell me, Marie?
Absolutely the same. Contact your local Down Syndrome Association, and they will get you all the help that you need and support. It's just a wonderful organization.
I think that's good advice, that when you're in a situation, you go and talk to people that are in the situation. I think you had told me, well, we don't want to go down the road too far, but just your experience is that sometimes healthcare people might not have the best advice because they're not involved in it. That they might talk to people and say, well, you have a baby that has Down syndrome, and here's our advice, and it might not be the best advice. So talk to people that know, because they're involved and they have children with Down syndrome. So what would you say about your advice on that?
I know in our particular case, when we had that particular blood test, that maternity 21, and you were assigned to a
geneticist.
A person whose job is to basically look at the data that is provided by this information, and basically let you know this is what's going on, this is the situation. And the call that we received and of course Anne Marie received it. I happened to be out of town when she got the call, and it's the most devastating call you can ever receive. Is basically your child has Down syndrome, and
And the next question that came out of her mouth was, "Do you want to continue the pregnancy?"
Yeah.
And I think definitely healthcare and there's a lot of work to be done in that. That should not have been the first thing
Right.
that came out of her mouth. Basically, was
Maybe talking to you a little bit more about
Right.
the future and things like
Exactly,
that.
and this is not a death sentence,
Yeah.
and this is the most wonderful thing that could have happened to you. Things like that I think would have gone a long way, and at the time I was not connected to the Down Syndrome Association. So I had no idea what to expect. It was just a very devastating call. So I think, training in healthcare, and I think it's getting there. I just think it's not quite there with
Right.
some people, but I think that would definitely be a step in the right direction.
Right. And as far as your all's experience now, if you were telling someone that they are about to have a baby with Down syndrome, you might tell them you're about to step into one of the most exciting adventures of your life, rather than, do you want to continue this?
The first
And
thing,
then,
yeah.
because it's a different, exciting, and as Rusty said, there are thorns all up and down the stem, but there's a rose at the end. So
Exactly.
I really appreciate you all being here. We've got about a minute left. This has been an exciting show. The star of the show left us somewhere here. I think we have snacks here, and she went to get a snack.
To get some nachos.
Yeah, I went to get some nachos. But she definitely is the star of the show, and you'll see that in the credits that roll by here. And I appreciate your all's friendship for so many years. These folks have been with me through thick and thin, and we've been friends forever. And hopefully we will be from now until the end. So appreciate you all being here.
Thank you so much, Dan. It's been a true pleasure to come on your show today. I truly appreciate it.
Thank you, and hopefully you'll be able to come back later as Annabelle grows up and we have more experiences. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening and watching again to Veritas Populi. And as we go through with many different subject matters, we want to just rub the truth and let it shine brighter. Thank you.